Hi there guys, I'm Nikhil from Grady Tech, and in this video I'll be doing the camera review of the OnePlus 9 Pro. Now this phone has a quad camera setup on the rear with a 48 megapixel primary camera with Sony IMX789 sensor with optical image stabilization, a 50 megapixel ultra wide angle camera with Sony IMX766 sensor that's followed by an 8 megapixel camera with telephoto lens and a 2 megapixel monochrome camera. For selfies, we get a 16 megapixel camera with Sony IMX471 sensor. We'll first start off with the selfies. Color reproduction is pretty accurate, skin tones also look pretty good. There is a slight bit of post-processing going on, but the end results are pretty good. Dynamic range and exposure control are also pretty good. Now these are some portrait selfies. Edge detection is pretty good, color reproduction is also pretty accurate, skin tone looks good and accurate. Once again there is a bit of slight skin softening going on, but once again the end results are pretty good. Now these are some selfies taken in low lighting conditions. There is a bit of skin softening going on in few photos, but they do look good. Colors are slightly to the duller side, but the selfies themselves look good and usable. Now this is the sample footage recorded using the front-facing camera. This phone also offers electronic image stabilization while recording video, so the footage is pretty stable, color reproduction is good, images are pretty sharp. Dynamic range can be better. Now these are some sample shots taken with the rear camera. These pictures have good exposure control. Colors look slightly saturated, but personally I like them. Dynamic range is also great. Color temperature is slightly to the warmer side. Once again that depends on personal preference. Now these are some pictures taken with the wide angle camera. Wide angle shots are followed by the regular shots. Exposure control and dynamic range are pretty good. Once again, colors are slightly to the saturated side, just like the primary camera, but the color temperature is slightly to the cooler side. Once again, there's no good or bad thing about it, it just depends upon personal preference. Now these are some macro shots. In this aspect, OnePlus definitely does a great job. Pictures have good color reproduction, but the colors are slightly to the saturated side, and they have good sharpness. Now these are some portrait shots taken with the rear camera. Edge detection is pretty good in most cases. Color reproduction is pretty good, but once again slightly to the saturated side. Dynamic range and exposure control are very well managed. Sharpness is also good. Default portrait shots are slightly cropped and have slight skin softening. We also get an option to take wide angle portrait shots, and they do look pretty good. Now this phone also has a dedicated 48MP mode. In the default mode, whenever you take a picture, images are compressed to give you a 12 megapixel picture. So for some reason, if you want to take a bigger 48 megapixel picture, you can use this mode. Normally, there won't be a major difference between the regular mode and 48MP mode, but with 48MP mode, you can definitely capture more details. Now these are some pictures taken in low lighting conditions. Even in low lighting conditions, OnePlus 9 Pro definitely does a pretty good job with color reproduction. Once again, they are slightly to the saturated side. It also does a great job with limiting the noise while retaining the sharpness. In these pictures, you can also see clouds, which are way more visible than on other phones. In complete darkness, you can also take pictures with the flash. They do look pretty good, colors look pretty accurate, and the sharpness is also pretty good. Now these are some pictures taken with a wide angle camera in low lighting conditions. They look pretty similar to the regular shots with a wide angle camera, but slightly to the softer side. Now this phone also has a dedicated night mode, and these are some sample shots. Overall images are much brighter than the regular mode, but there's definitely a bit of over sharpening going on. In indoor lighting conditions, night mode definitely works much better, giving you better results. Now we also have new filters in night mode, and these are the filters, and the pictures do look pretty good. Now as for video recording, this is a sample footage recorded at 1080p resolution at 30 fps. This phone has optical image stabilization and also offers electronic image stabilization. And the stabilization is also pretty good. Exposure control and dynamic range are great, and the color reproduction is also pretty good. Now this is a sample footage recorded with a wide angle camera. This phone offers electronic image stabilization, but the footage is a bit shaky. Color reproduction is good, exposure control and dynamic range are also pretty decent. Next, this phone also has the super stable mode which can further stabilize the footage, and this is the sample shot. Footage is definitely much more stable, but for the price and from a flagship from OnePlus, it could have been better. Next, we can also record 4K video on this phone. This is the sample footage recorded in 4K resolution, but downscaled to 1080p resolution. Stabilization is pretty good, color reproduction is also good. This phone also offers 8K video recording option, and this is the sample footage, once again downscaled to 1080p resolution. In this mode, we can only record video up to a maximum of 5 minutes. Overall, the footage is pretty good, but the footage is slightly shaky. Next, we also have slow motion video recording. We can record slow-mo video at 1080p resolution at 240fps and at 720p resolution at 480fps. This is the sample footage. So guys, to conclude, cameras on the OnePlus 9 Pro are definitely good. They're definitely worth the price, but if you really compare them to the flagships from say Pixel, Samsung or the Apple, they're definitely not up to the par. But for a regular user, considering other phones in the price segment, they definitely do a great job. So guys, what do you think about the camera performance of this phone? Do let me know by commenting below this video, and if you're planning to buy this phone, use the link in the description. It always helps the channel. With that said, this is Nikhil signing off. See you in my next video.